But first, a lot going on in Washington as well. Lawmakers grilled Bruce Orr in closed-door hearings on Capitol Hill today. Republicans say that Orr played a central role in the Obama Justice Department's investigation into the 2016 Trump campaign. Fox News chief intelligence correspondent Catherine Herridge has been covering the story since the very beginning, and she joins us tonight.
Well, thanks, Tucker. The closed-door deposition lasted 7 hours with a consensus among Republican lawmakers. The Justice Department official Bruce Orr told the FBI there were issues with the Trump dossier and its author, former British spy Christopher Steele, but the evidence suggests the National Security Court was kept in the dark when it authorized a surveillance warrant for Trump campaign aid. One lawmaker said Orr's answers about the timing and handling of the dossier do not line up with other witnesses, including former FBI lawyer Lisa Page, who sent anti-Trump texts, and Glenn Simpson, whose firm Fusion GPS was paid by the DNC and Clinton campaign for the anti-Trump research. With more than 2 decades of government service, Orr's portfolio at the Justice Department was gangs and drugs, not Russia. But in 2016, documents show Orr became the back channel between FBI officials and Steele after the Bureau fired him as a confidential source. Earlier today, Orr ignored Fox's questions.
Mr. Orr, who authorized your contact with the FBI? Mr. Orr, were you acting alone, or did you have authority from a Justice Department official? How did your wife benefit from the dossier contract? Did you have a conflict of interest? Mr. Orr, will you take our questions?
Lawmakers also told reporters today that Orr had a conflict because his wife, Nellie Orr, was part of that firm that put together the dossier, and she specifically did Russia research. Tucker.
Catherine Harris, thanks a lot
You're
for
welcome.
that. Molly Hemingway, the Federalist, joins us tonight. Molly, do we know if the FBI was aware that Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie, worked at Fusion GPS?
The FBI should have been, that information should have been made available to the court, and it was not made available to the court. We still need to know what the FBI knew and when it knew it.
To what extent do we have a final answer on the question to what extent the Steele dossier allowed this spying to proceed and the investigation to continue?
We know that the Steele dossier was used to help secure a warrant to surveil Christopher, or to surveil a Trump campaign associate. We have, and that is pretty explosive information. When you think about it, when we started learning about this, the idea that this dossier, which was a Hillary Clinton funded and originated campaign document, the idea that it would have been weaponized and used by our intelligence agencies was pretty explosive, and now we all have to acknowledge that it was.
Bruce Orr seems like the critical link. I mean, here's a guy, as Catherine Harris just reported, who was not a Russia expert, whose main role seemed to be facilitating connection between a federal law enforcement agency and his wife's firm, but the court never learned that. Why is that not rotten? Why is that not corrupt?
Well, and Bruce Orr was not at the FBI. He was not working on this FBI investigation. Right. He was funneling the information, and he was funneling the information after the FBI had claimed that they had terminated Christopher Steele as a source. They claimed that they terminated him and that they would not use his information because they realized that he had been leaking to the media contrary to what his arrangement was with the FBI, but they still managed to use his information.
So you could be, the fiercest Trump opponent politically and still have grave concerns as a civil libertarian and an American about the way this was conducted, couldn't you?
In fact, your feelings about Trump should have nothing to do with your feelings about whether this was appropriate.
I couldn't agree more. So where are the civil libertarians in this?
That's a very good question, and this is something that really is important, because if this can be done against a major presidential campaign, it certainly can be done against other people. There are so many questions that need to be answered. Perhaps there really is a good explanation for why this all went down, but the idea that people should just be forced to accept that it was okay without getting answers to basic questions about why this investigation started, when it really started, when it officially started, when it unofficially started, what was used. We do know already something very bad, which is that the Hillary Clinton funded and created research document was used by the FBI to secure a wiretap.
It's almost unbelievable. So there's another piece of it, too, that I want you to respond to. So Republican Congressman Mark Meadows says that the FBI and DOJ have developed a creative workaround in order to get surveillance warrants on people they want to target. Here's his account of it.
We know that some people at the Department of Justice and FBI actually gave information to the media, then the stories were reported, then they used those reports to justify further investigations. You know, that's like saying, well, we're going to incriminate on one hand and be the jury on the other. It just doesn't work that way.
So I should just note, it's still murky. A lot of this is murky, but the FBI appears to be pushing back against this story, telling Fox News that this is actually incorrect and this is not the way they went about getting warrants. Yep. What's your view of this?
We're getting different reports about what exactly was said. We do know, though, we know this from the Inspector General report that came out about the Hillary Clinton email investigation, that there's an epidemic of leaking at the FBI. This is something that was so severe that the IG actually spun it off into a separate investigation because it is so bad that people with security clearances are having dozens of contacts with reporters. It's also something that anyone with a pulse could figure out if they were paying attention for the last 2 years, that there were so many leaks of classified information, whether it was about the dossier, whether it was about the briefing of the dossier to the president, or about other matters such as Mike Flynn's conversations. These were all leaked to the media, and so we do know that we have a very serious problem. When you're doing a leak, you're doing it for a purpose. I think we need to know more about what the purpose is behind all these leaks. We also know that from what we do know of the FISA application, that media reports were used in that FISA application, media reports that were sourced to the creator of the Russia dossier himself. We should have a very high standard for what we take to a FISA court and how we use news reports.
Well, you'd think any sensible judge would laugh at an application that contained a report from BuzzFeed News or Yahoo or any news organization. I mean, it's the FBI, it's the DOJ. They should have their own data, right?
They also mentioned in the application an opinion story from the Washington Post, which might not meet the standard that you would hope for in an application.
The closer you get, the less impressive it is. Molly, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Richard Goodstein served as an advisor to both Bill and Hillary Clinton and survived. He joins us tonight. So, Richard, we've established the left has been pretty clear on it. They don't have any problem, since all the civil libertarians have left the party, they don't have any problem with the fact that the last administration spied on its political opponents during this campaign. So tell me if you would have a problem with this. The next election is coming up. A year and a half from now, we're going to be right in the middle of the primaries for the 2020 election. Would you be okay with the Trump administration authorizing a wiretap or surveillance of aides to the leading Democratic candidate during the primaries? Yeah. No, you wouldn't. Oh, you wouldn't. That would bother you. No. You'd become a civil libertarian again.
So there was no spying, Tucker. Please, you're insulting your audience and everybody.
There was no spying.
What there was there was somebody, Carter Page, who was identified by U.S. intelligence as somebody who was an agent of the Soviets, who was one of 5 people that Donald Trump said were his foreign policy advisors.
But, so there was no FISA? Hold on. Wait, you're blowing my mind here, because I've been sort of on this for the last year and a half. I thought there was a FISA warrant to spy on him. But that's not real. There was no FISA warrant?
Of course there was.
So what's that warrant for? It's for spying on someone, isn't it?
Well, no. It wasn't really spying. What they were doing was authorizing... Well, listen, you know, you're trying to parse something that's not funny.
I'm trying to parse. I'm trying to speak English.
Excuse me, George Papadopoulos bragged about the fact months before anybody had ever heard of Carter Page in our world, about the fact that the Russians had dirt on Hillary Clinton. He bragged about that, and that was pretty alarming to U.S. intelligence. So they authorized somebody.
So that's why he was charged for espionage, right? Was Papadopoulos charged for espionage? Oh no, he wasn't. Okay, just trying to refresh my memory.
Ultimately,
but hold on, very quick. Let's just get back to the beginning.
He pled guilty to a felony.
Oh, to espionage? Oh no, to lying to federal agents, just like Martha Stewart. But let me ask you a question. How is that not spying? If you get a warrant to spy on someone and surveil that person, maybe it's justified. You're arguing a different point. My point is, though, it is spying, and to say it's not spying is, of course, the definition of dishonesty, right?
No. So the Trump people insist that Carter Page was not working in the campaign as of the time that the FISA warrant was authorized. And don't forget, it was several Republican judges, and only Republican judges, who authorized it time and time and time again.
You would be cool. Okay, you would be cool if the Trump administration got its Department of Justice to get a FISA warrant to not spy, but to surveil for perfectly good reason on aides to the leading Democratic candidate in this next election. Because we've set a precedent here that that's totally fine as long as someone mentions the word Russia. So you're not going to complain about that when it happens. Oh, it's not.
Tucker, you don't have enough time in the show, not just my segment, for me to go through all the elements that we see as collusion-related, right?
Okay. And who's been charged for collusion? Anyone? Has anyone been charged for collusion? Oh, nobody has been.
Listen, nobody was charged. Vandersloot hadn't been charged when you knew his name. Papadopoulos hadn't been charged when you first heard his name. All those Russians that were charged by Mueller hadn't been charged until
we're Natalie
Mueller
Holloway territory now. This is big. This conspiracy. I didn't realize that part of it was taking place in Aruba. But let me ask you though.
We don't know what.
Okay.
We don't make a joke about it.
I'm not. No, I think this is inherently a joke, but a bad joke, a sad joke. And again, I just want to get back to first principles here. I want to know, because Trump will not always be president. We will have other presidents, God willing. And at that point, is it okay to behave like this if Trump is not the target? Is this a precedent that you're comfortable with? It's a really simple question. Does any of this bother you at all? We're doing things that have never been done. The Obama people did something that's never been done that I'm aware of. They spied on a rival presidential campaign. And that's okay with you, but would it be okay if Trump did it to the next guy? It's a really simple question.
They didn't spy on a rival campaign. They spied on a Russian agent, a single Russian agent.
He's a Russian agent.
You think that's a joke?
No.
You think that's
no,
that's not my
I think
conclusion.
you're accusing an American citizen
says.
of a crime for which he has not been charged. So I'm going to leave that between you and your libel lawyer to sort out. But keep in mind, the person you just accused of being a Russian agent has denied it and never been charged with it, and there's no evidence that he was. So it's a very heavy thing to say about a fellow American,
Truth is a defense. Truth, if he comes after me for libel, truth is a defense. I think I have the whole intelligence community of the United States backing me up on that one.
There is no intelligence community. There are a bunch of people who work for intel agencies, and they work for us. And we have a right to know what they're doing, and we don't. And that is very troubling. And the question is, are you comfortable with that?
Well, which is why Bruce Orr should have had a public hearing. In Watergate, we had one public hearing after another. Why don't they have, you know why? Because it would be like Benghazi, and it would backfire in their face.
Benghazi? What does Benghazi have to do with it?
Because the Benghazi hearings with Hillary, especially after 11 and a half hours, it was shown, even by Trey Gowdy's own admission, that she hadn't done anything wrong. That's why they don't have Bruce Orr publicly. You know that as well as I do.
I think that as many of these hearings as possible ought to be public. I think the rationale for spying on an American citizen and destroying his life and accusing him of colluding with a foreign power, I think we should know all of that. I think we should bring transparency, because I am losing faith that our system is on the level. I'm beginning to think it is rotten, and the people who run it are corrupt, and they don't have my interest as a taxpayer and a citizen in mind when they do these things. And I'm just telling you, take Trump out of this. This is scary stuff that Obama did, really scary. And I know we're not allowed to criticize Obama because he's a holy man, but let's be totally honest. You shouldn't do stuff like that because it's a terrible precedent.
No, you, as a presidential campaign, you should not be having your son and campaign manager and son-in-law meet with Russians to get dirt. You, as a presidential candidate, shouldn't be encouraging Russians to break U.S. law to steal goods from your opponent. That's what shouldn't be happening. And if a Democrat did it, shame on them.
Look, the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC paid for information from the Russian government to use against their opponent.
The Russians
There's no debate about. There's no debate about that. Whatever, but I don't even care about that. I don't want to relitigate it. I just want to know what the next election's going to be like. I don't want the Trump administration to spy on rival campaigns. But you and the lunatics on the left have created a precedent that will allow them to, and future presidents to do that. And I don't want to live in that country. That's all I'm saying. Well, and I don't think you do either.
And we have a fundamental disagreement. You tend to belittle what the Russians did. I actually think they undermine, as Dick Cheney said, it was an attack on the U.S. Sorry, that's me.
Spare me. Richard, thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, CNN had a huge story that turned out to be hugely false. They're not embarrassed, though. Why is that? Also breaking this evening, Fox is tracking the primaries in 3 states. There are 2 races Fox News has projected in Florida. Congressman Ron DeSantis has, we can say, won the GOP gubernatorial primary in that state. And current Governor Rick Scott is, no surprise, projected to win the Republican nomination for the U.S. Senate. We'll have live results throughout the night, so stay tuned to Fox.